Just a terrible fade. But that's not my fault. It's not my fault. No way, bro. Thought we'd do some natural light today. So it's so doggone bright outside. And there's plenty of light coming in. Well, what's up, people? How you doing? Good to see you. And it is a warm one. Again. Got people coming in. What's up, people of Rockfin? How are you? Osama's over on Rockfin. People of Twitter. Where are you? How are we live on Twitter? Hello. Hello. If you're on Twitter, you're watching on Twitter, you know what to do. Let me know if you're there. Send me a chat. Send me a like. Send me a repost. Send me a something. It's hot, Gene. Maybe a little hotter today than yesterday. I don't know. Can't tell. It's just going to be straight, 90s and above. Hovering between 92 and 98 for the next week, it looks like. So there's that. I mean, it says 95 right now. And we got 98 tomorrow, 97, 93, 92, 89, 87. Cooling on down to 78 by Wednesday. Raise the roof. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, 95 hot enough. Tomorrow is going to be real cracking. You know what I'm saying? Super cracking. Anyways, we got a couple things to talk about today. What are we talking about today? We're talking about can we air condition our way out of climate change? I know. That's a real question. I bet everybody knows the answer to that one, too. We're going to look at a bunch of Hurricane Beryl videos. Talk about the damage. New York City Bridge is stuck because it is overheated. It is expanded so much from the heat in New York City that it cannot operate. And also fiberglass. Just like microplastics and toxins of all sorts have made their way into fish. So we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff and more on the Black Bear News today. That's right, Jazz Farm. We can AC ourselves. We will starve because agricultural fields can't be cooled. What about all the animals that can't AC themselves? What about the insects that can't AC themselves? Huh? Did you think of that one? I bet you didn't. You didn't think about that one. Cocaine bear? Does that bear seem a little aggressive to you? That bear is awfully jumpy. Bella the Greasy says, thermal expansion causes lengthening in steel structures, but does not cause controlled demolition. Cheers. All right. We got natural light going on in the garage, in the studio. It's called a studio. Some people call it a garage. I call it a studio. Welcome to my studio. Y'all are welcome. Okay. New Mexico getting slapped around. Slapped on down to Funky Town. By what? Extreme weather. Small town of Ruidoso, New Mexico is under its 5th flash flood emergency in the last 20 days, with many under evacuation right now due to life-threatening flooding. 5 flash flood emergencies in this little town of New Mexico. Dang. I'd be thinking, well, you know what? This New Mexico is a mighty fine place, but maybe there are some other places for me to be living in. You know what I'm saying? This is people in the Houston. I know exactly where this. I know exactly where this service road is. I've been down it many times. Houstonians stranded on I-45 service road due to the flooding from Hurricane Beryl. Many people are attempting to drive through the flood waters around other stranded cars while locals watch from the overpass. And Steve Austin says, car brain in action. We're not going to make it. I can do it. See, the bigger the truck. You might be right. You might be wrong. But the bigger the truck. I know, Gene. I should probably put some books lined up behind me so that I'm serious. Yes, the silk screens are actually. Silk screen behind me. I use it all. That's the one I use to make Black Bear News t-shirts. I don't know. There's artifacts. People are trying to get through, and then they're like, yeah. Not so much. It's hot, guys. I don't know. It's gonna I know exactly where that service road is in Houston, only because it holds a dear spot in my heart. It's where one of my favorite restaurants is. That's open 24 hours. And I used to go there. It's like an all-night Mexican food place. And I would go, play a show, and I would be able to go there, 1 or 2 in the morning and get something delicious. You like the real? Do you know what this says? This is a trophy. And it says Wildest Cat of the Week, 1976. Wildest Cat of the Week, 1976. I was 9 years old in 1976. That's when I won the Wildest Cat of the Week. This is a Red Llama. Red Llama music. Just showing you about my place. Then Brenda, where am I? Oh, I'm on the wrong side. Brenda got me this really cool black bear. So there's all kinds of this. Let me just show you around. This is a painting somebody did of me while I was playing a gig. I walked off the stage and somebody said, "Hey, I painted this of you," and I was like, "What?" I have a couple of these. I have several of these actually, but this one was really cool. I really love this one. Anyways, let's keep going. In Phoenix, climate change made the heat in Las Vegas and the West. Climate change made it 5 times more likely, according to the Climate Central's Climate Shift Index. Should be no surprise the baseline temperature in the West is a few degrees higher than just 50 years ago. Climate Shift Index was 5, meaning climate change made a daily average temperature at least 5 times more likely. Okay, let's look at this article here. Or this post here, article post. About how how on earth are we going to air condition our way out of climate change? Or are we? Jeff Master says, this is going to get expensive if climate change increases the outside temperature from 96 to 100. The energy your air conditioner consumes increases by 42%, since the power consumed varies by the square of the temperature difference between the outside and the inside. Let's look at this. I mean, I think we know what the answer is going to be, but we're gonna dive into this, okay? Part 1, a primer on air conditioning. I don't know how far down we're going to get in this article, but we'll read a little bit. Air conditioning was initially a symbol of comfort and wealth enjoyed by the wealthy in theaters and upscale homes. Over time, as technology advanced and costs decreased, air conditioning became more accessible to the general public. With global warming, though, air conditioning has moved from being a luxury to being necessary for survival in many places. I mean, people lived in those places before there was air conditioning, by the way. So It's not like you can't live. You absolutely can live in Miami or New Orleans or Houston or Dallas without air conditioning. People did it before. It was just a little harder, but they had other ways to cope with it. And I guess people lived, when people lived in those places back then, life expectancy wasn't as long. I imagine that air conditioning has something to do with life expectancy going up over the past couple of decades. Let's keep going. With global warming, though, air conditioning has moved from being a luxury to being necessary for survival in many places. If you live in Phoenix or Houston and your air conditioner fails, staying in your house may be impossible, and you may need to evacuate. Air conditioning now plays a central role in protecting public health in homes, workplaces, and public spaces. But of course, not everyone can afford it. This is one of the biggest equity issues in the climate debate, with some saying, we'll rely on air conditioning to address climate change. This essentially abandons the poorest in our society, as well as the animal world, to a hellishly hot world they did not create. Not mentioning insects or agriculture in there. Given the enormous importance of air conditioning, I thought it would be useful to put together a few posts about it. This is part one, some background on the physics of air conditioning. Heat engines. In thermodynamics, a heat engine is a device that converts thermal energy into mechanical work by exploiting the temperature difference between a hot and a cold reservoir. A coal-fired power plant is an example of a heat engine. It takes heat from a coal-burning furnace. The hot reservoir converts some of it to work, e.g. driving a generator to produce electricity, and rejects the remainder of the heat into the cold reservoir, which is the environment. Note that you cannot convert heat to work with 100% efficiency. This is a consequence of the second law of thermodynamics. The second law, in fact, allows us to derive exactly how much of the energy extracted from the hot reservoir can be converted into work. This is the equation for it, which is efficiency equals 1 minus TE over TH, where TH is the temperature of the hot reservoir, e.g. the furnace, and TC, is the temperature of the cold reservoir, usually in the environment. Plugging in typical values of 80 Fahrenheit and 600 Fahrenheit for a coal-fired power plant, you get an efficiency of around 50%. This is the best you can do, and in a real world, you won't achieve this. Very efficient coal-fired power plants tend to be around 40% efficient. This means that for every 100 joules of energy from burning coal, you get 40 joules of electricity. The other 60 joules are waste heat ejected into the environment. We're not heating up the planet at all. That's a ridiculous idea. Come on, everybody. This global warming is a cockamamie. The hell? Y'all ever notice the physics? Did you? Well, you'd certainly understand physics when it comes to other things, but just not this. Is it just dogma? Is it prescribing to a narrative without thinking it through? Is it intentional? I don't know. I have questions. Gene, can we pull up colder air from the ground while having well-insulated and designed homes? Yes, we can. That's actually a yes. Anywhere there's a colder environment. It depends on how far, you also get heat pumps from underground. So geothermal also, that is how root cellars work. Yes, Jazz Farm. Exactly. Exactly. The ground is a very well insulated place itself, which is why that's a good thing to do. Okay, let's keep going. Anyways, this necessary production of waste heat is a main reason that thermal power plants are usually sited next to rivers or lakes, which are used as heat sinks. Same with nuclear energy. Did you know that? Did you know? Air conditioners. What does this have to do with air conditioning? Well, an air conditioner is just a heat engine run backwards. You put work into it, and it takes energy from the cold reservoir, the inside of your house, and ejects the energy into the hot reservoir, the outside of your house. The efficiency of an air conditioner is usually expressed in terms of its coefficient of performance, the ratio of the heat removed from the inside of your house, QC, to the energy input required to remove the heat, W. COP equals QC over W times, I don't know, that's not times. I can't read this whole equation because I'm not a super math professor. Anyways, TE over TH minus TC equals TC over, I don't even know what that symbol is. Somebody help me. Somebody help me because I didn't get this far in math. Not a nerd, no. What is this symbol, this little triangle symbol with the T? Well, somebody helps me explain this. The important result here is that the efficiency of your air conditioner decreases as triangle T increases, e.g. the outside temperature goes up. Delta, thank you. Oh, the unstoppable. Kevin, no one cares? I care. Delta T is change in temp. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Rearranging the equation above, the energy W required to remove heat QC from your house is proportional to W. This is not a times, is it? I don't know what this symbol is either. If anybody can help me with that. Delta can be read as change. Help me with this, guys. This symbol here, that's not, what is that? While I'm waiting for help, some numbers will illustrate the importance of this. If your house is at 75 Fahrenheit and the outside temperature increases from 96 Fahrenheit to 100 Fahrenheit, then your air conditioner needs to consume 20% more energy to remove 1 joule of energy from inside of your house. To maintain a constant temperature in your house, your air conditioner must continuously remove the same amount of energy that is entering your house. In other words, the cooling QC of your air conditioner needs to match the energy flowing into your house. If we assume that energy flowing into the house from the hot outdoors is set by Newtonian cooling, then QC is also proportional to delta T. So our expression reduces to this. Proportional to? Thank you. So I'd read that W proportional to delta T squared over TC, right? Is that correct? is proportional to. Thank you. All right. Thus, the work required to keep your house at a fixed temperature, Tc, increases with the square of the temperature difference between inside and outside temperature, delta T squared. The impact on required energy. In this context, W is a measure of the amount of electricity you need to buy in order to air condition your house. As the temperature outside goes up, the energy required and the amount of money you have to spend on it increases as delta T squared, or the change in temperature increases at delta T squared. Let's use the same numbers from the previous example. You want to keep your house at 75 Fahrenheit. If climate change has increased the outside temperature from 96 Fahrenheit to 100 Fahrenheit, the energy your air conditioner consumes increases by 42%. There's a headline from ABC News: Is air conditioning enough? Why extreme heat can still put you at risk. High temps were linked to 11,000 U.S. deaths, 120,000 hospital visits in 2023. Which makes absolute perfect sense, right? Gene says if they include a formula, it makes it look like the article has to be a serious and worthy article. I mean, so I have two thoughts on this. I think, to people that understand the equations, it's, I guess, makes it easier to understand. But to somebody who doesn't understand the equation, it's like putting things in legalese, right? There are ways to explain it without, right? You can explain all of that without the equations, right? There are simpler ways to explain it, but if you understand the equation, then it doesn't really matter. Then it's easier to understand, I think. I mean, I love the way that people explain. There are ways that people can explain physics to make it very simple to understand, right? You can use all the maths, right? And use these very, complex equations, or you can just explain how things work. And there are ways to do it that makes it like, it's very simply like, I see that. I see how that works, right? Anyways. We all got through this together, right? And thanks, guys, for the help. I appreciate it. I was really good in math and physics as a young child, but then I actually I stopped going to school when I became a troubled teen. And that's where my education stopped. So but I read many books, and I still am a student of many things of life in general, even though not formally. Anyways, let's keep going. Averaged over an entire day, the increase will be less than this because delta T is smaller for much of the day, e.g. at night, but the result is robust. Climate change is driving exponentially increasing energy demand for cooling. Can we air condition our way out of climate change? Air conditioning is expensive. And because of climate change, it's getting a lot more expensive. People with financial means who work in air-conditioned offices and live in climate-controlled homes can handle rising temperatures by simply paying for more electricity. However, a significant portion of the global population lives the hot life. These people live in homes without air conditioning, work outdoors, or in warehouses or kitchens with no climate control. And even when people have access to air conditioning, they can struggle to afford it. This is well described by Jeff Goodall in his great Rolling Stone article about extreme heat in Phoenix. On hot days, Juarez's small apartment feels like a cave. She has heavy purple curtains on the window to block the sun. I could not live here without air conditioning, she tells me. Because she has poor credit, she doesn't qualify for the usual monthly billing from the Salt River Project, her utility. Instead, to pay for electricity and keep her AC running, SRP has given her a card reader that plugs into an outlet that she has to feed like a jukebox to keep the power on. Juarez turns on her AC only a few hours a day. Still, her electric bill can run $500 a month during the summer, which is more than she pays for rent. To Juarez, who takes a bus 5 miles to a laundromat in the middle of the night because washing machines are discounted to 50 cents a load after 1 a.m., $500 is a tremendous amount of money. She shows me the meter on the card reader. She has $49 worth of credit on it, enough for a few more days of power. And when she runs out, I am in trouble, she says bluntly. Juarez, who works as an in-home caretaker for the elderly, says she knows of several people who lived alone and died when they failed to pay their electric bills and tried to live without AC. This is the reality of air conditioning. Great if you can afford it, terrible if you can't. Any actual adaptation plan that relies on air conditioning will require massive government expenditures to air condition places that have historically not been air conditioned, like Chicago or Seattle. And there's nothing the will adapt crowd is less interested in than paying to help people adapt. Appendix for the physics nerds. What determines maximum efficiency of a heat engine? Why do coal-fired power plant have a maximum efficiency of 50%? This maximum efficiency is determined by the second law of thermodynamics, which says that the entropy of an isolated system cannot decrease. When a heat engine removes energy QH from a heat reservoir at temperature TH, the entropy of the reservoir decreases by QH over TH. Because of the second law, entropy must increase elsewhere to balance this decrease. This requires the engine to reject a quantity of heat, QC, into a cool reservoir at a lower temperature, TC, which increases entropy of that reservoir by QC over TC. For the engine to operate cyclically and not violate the second law, the increase in entropy in the cool reservoir must at least equal the decrease in the hot reservoir. This means QH over TH equals QC over TC for the most efficient engine possible. By conservation of energy, the first law of thermodynamics, the work output of the engine W is the difference between the heat absorbed from the hot reservoir and the heat rejected into the cool reservoir. W equals QH minus QC. Writing the efficiency of a heat engine as a ratio of work output to heat input, W over QH, and substituting W equals QH minus QC, we can rewrite the efficiency as QH minus QC over QH, which reduces to, 1 minus QC over QH. And the given that QH over TH equals QC over TC for a maximally efficient engine that can be rewritten as 1 minus TC over TH, which is the equation for efficiency presented at the beginning of this post. Well, there you go. What this shows is that 40% efficiency typical of thermal power plants is not lazy engineering. Rather, this is required to not violate the second law of thermodynamics. Yeah. And the rejected heat does not work, Bella says. Yeah. Jazz Farm says they won't rescue people in Death Valley right now because helicopters can't get off the ground. Holy shnikes. Yeah, I mean, it is you know, they're playing to the physics nerd crowd. It's fine. Definitely explaining it for those who don't understand the equations is kind of key. The helicopters cannot get lift in the heat, Jazz Farm. I'm guessing. All right, let's keep going because time is of the essence, and I have other things to move on to today. And it's also extremely hot in here. From Steve Austin, I think it's great that humans have figured out how to make electricity from the wind and sun, but those will never power this economy. And yet so many, even well-meaning folks are selling this as the way to keep it all the same. So it's a distraction. I don't know if I'm going to read this right now. I'm going to go through some other posts and see if we have time. Okay. Let's see how long this is. I did have a bunch of video from Beryl to play, but maybe we've all seen those. How did adoption of renewable energy become a drug of choice to treat the disease of climate change? No one knows. Wind and solar energy policies evolved over several decades without planning, leadership, effective communication, or stakeholder engagement. There was not and is not any vision, resource allocation, communication strategy, governance structure, or change management plan. In other words, none of the elements for a successful transition have been considered or implemented. That's why emissions and temperatures keep rising. We're on a trip to Abilene led by a clown car of energy-blind politicians. The oil crisis of the 1970s and early 1980s, especially the 1973 oil embargo, provided the wake-up call that ignited a global push towards alternative energy sources. Governments around the world began funneling resources into renewable energy research and development. The motivation for these policies was to reduce dependency on oil by substituting some amount of renewable energy for fossil energy. Climate change and the environment were not part of the plan, but were bolted onto the scheme later. Eventually, full or nearly full energy substitution became the objective for those who supported an energy transition. There was never a moment, a discussion, or a decision that established renewable energy as the primary solution to climate change. It was an Abilene moment. The Abilene paradox describes how a group is swept by momentum into a situation that no member has thoughtfully considered. God dang, we live in an Abilene paradox. That's the entirety of technological society. $102 in Spokane today? Jeez, Dan. That is warm for Washington. I'm going to read that again. The Abilene paradox describes how a group is swept by momentum into a situation that no member has thoughtfully considered. On a hot summer day in a small town in West Texas, a family is sitting on a porch. enjoying some fresh cold tea when the grandfather suggests they all take a ride to Abilene for dinner. The family's father feels it's a bad idea, but is afraid to offer his opinion, so he foolishly says, "Sounds like a great idea to me." Then everyone else chimes in with their enthusiasm for the drive, and before long they are on the dirt highway headed for supper. When they return after a long hot ride and some horrible food, the mother-in-law says, "That wasn't a great trip." Then her daughter adds, "I just went along because I wanted to keep the group happy." The husband, who first supported the idea, says he only went because he didn't want to disappoint anyone. The Abilene paradox. Did any world leader ask if switching to renewable energy was a good idea or whether modern civilization could be sustained by electricity, let alone by intermittent wind and solar power? Political leaders have largely taken a market approach to climate change. This means that governments have offered economic incentives in the form of tax credits, research grants, and direct subsidies to stimulate markets to solve the problem. The resulting fire hose of public money favors misallocation of capital for short-term corporate rather than long-term public benefit. Privatize the profits and socialize the costs. Kind of like everything else. In a recent opinion article, Martin Wolf observed that market forces will probably not remedy climate change. At the heart of attempts to halt damaging climate change is a pair of ideas: decarbonize electricity and electrify the economy. So how is it going? Badly is the answer. The atmosphere responds to emissions, not good intentions. In 2023, the production of electricity generated by fossil fuels reached an all-time peak. It seems that our flawed proxy for a global energy policy misses the critical point. Renewable energy, while beneficial, is predominantly applicable to electric power generation, which accounts for a mere 20% of overall energy consumption and only about 35% of total carbon emissions. This oversight reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of the broader energy needs and consumption patterns that drive modern economies. Renewable energy advocates routinely highlight a narrow and selective set of information to create the illusion that an energy transition is moving forward with shocking speed and effectiveness. Figure 1 shows an impressive 32% decrease in U.S. CO2 emissions from electric power generation since 2006. Unfortunately, power generation is only 30% of U.S. emissions. What about the other 70% of energy consumption? Moreover, one-third of lower carbon emissions in the U.S. is because of switching from coal to natural gas. Wind and solar have also contributed to emissions reductions, but to a lesser extent than natural gas. Wind energy accounted for about 19% of the reduction, while solar contributed around 4%. U.S. CO2 emissions from electric power generation have fallen 32%, and this is the chart. Rich Western countries like the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany have made the most progress on carbon emission reductions. Worldwide, the situation is less encouraging. World CO2 emissions from electric power generation are increasing at about 1% annually. These charts only reflect electric power generation. In April, energy expert Václav Smil provided this perspective. Contrary to common impressions, there has been no absolute worldwide decarbonization. In fact, the very opposite is the case. The world has become much more reliant on fossil carbon. We have not made the slightest progress. We cannot expect the world economy to become carbon-free by 2050. The goal may be desirable, but it remains unrealistic. That is energy expert Václav Smil. Gonna take a break here and say, guys, if you're considering supporting the show financially, I would encourage you to do so. This show needs your support in order to continue, to keep on keeping on. And if you enjoy the show being here for free 99, Monday through Friday, and sometimes on Saturday and sometimes on Sunday. If you want the show to continue being here and being free, please consider a financial donation. There are a bunch of links below. There's Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, Cash App, and coffees. Buy me a coffee. There are a bunch of ways to support the show. For those who already do so, you know who you are, and I thank you. Let's go back to this for just a few moments, and then we'll move on to some other things. In fact, world CO2 emissions and energy consumption continue to rise. Emissions have increased at twice the rate so far in 2024 as in 2023, 2022, or 2023. May 2024 CO2 concentration increased to 426.9 parts per million from 421.9 in December 2023. The rate of increase is going up. Sadly, the future may be worse than historical data trends suggest. For wealthy countries like the United States, the trajectory of carbon emission reductions is poised to level off around 2030. Don't hold your breath. The Energy Information Administration, EIA, anticipates that significant cuts in CO2 emissions from electric power generation will largely cease after 2030. Moving forward, total U.S. emissions are projected to stabilize, averaging around 4,000 million tons per year through 2050. Stabilize meaning that much carbon is going to be pumping out every year. 4,000 million tons. $4,000 million. Is that 4 billion tons? I feel like it is. That's 4 billion tons. I don't know why they wrote it that way. The capacity for further reductions is constrained by the finite number of coal-fired power plants that could be decommissioned. Additionally, the EIA has a rather conservative outlook on emissions cuts in the transportation sector and other areas. Despite the extensive publicity surrounding electric vehicles, the EIA forecasts that CO2 emissions from transportation will decrease only 150 million tons by 2050. When it comes to global electric power, CO2 emissions are projected to climb by 600 million metric tons, or 5%, by 2050. As the primary offender, coal as a primary offender will contribute an additional 590 million tons. Emissions from natural gas will also see an uptick, adding 450 million tons. On a slightly more optimistic note, emissions from liquid fuels are anticipated to drop by 424 million tons. This underscores the persistent reliance on fossil fuels despite the push for cleaner energy. The larger problem is that the emissions will continue to rise as long as electric power use increases. Air conditioning, anybody? Despite a fourfold expansion of wind and solar electric power generation by 2050, world carbon emissions are expected to climb because total generation will rise 14 gigawatt hours by then. The EIA expects world CO2 levels to increase 5 billion metric tons by 2050. Emissions from electric power will increase 600 million metric tons, but fall as a percentage of total emissions from 35% in 2023 to a whopping 32% by 2050. My God. Making gains, bros. Making gains. Promoters of renewable energy rarely mention its cost, but never miss an opportunity to state that it's the cheapest form of energy. It's not, but that misses the larger issue, that is, the approach is simply not working. The energy transition is imaginary. Energy substitution became the guiding principle of the initial renewable energy push following the oil shocks half a century ago. This approach was validated and reinforced with the advent of peak oil concerns in the late 1990s. A paradigm failed to evolve as climate change took center stage in the energy debate, and that is where the problem lies. Renewables cannot sustain our current civilization. This is not a matter of opinion or preference. It is what the data consistently shows. While renewables have the potential to supply a significant portion of our electric power and can help displace coal, the worst carbon emitter, that scenario is far from the reality we face. The future, as indicated by the data, is not aligning with the optimistic projections for renewable energy. An aggressive program to develop a balanced mix of natural gas and nuclear for baseload power should have been initiated at least 2 decades ago, and thank God that it wasn't. Because Art Berman, you are wrong, sir. Wrong. The urgency of climate change has since closed that window of opportunity. Thank the maker. I mean, it doesn't really matter. We already have enough nuclear power plants to pretty much destroy the planet if and when they all melt down. Nuclear power. The nerve. Natural gas and nuclear power should be the base load for civilization. I see where you're going with that, creative experiments. I mean, and he's also talking about policies that are not well thought through. He's indicating that renewable energy is not going to power our civilization as it is, but did he think through other scenarios with how our civilization lives? It doesn't sound like it, right? And so I see what you're saying, creative experiments, and I agree with you. For the well-intentioned ideas at the beginning of this article, he didn't really think things through either. And he thinks that if we started ramping up nuclear power generation decades ago, that would have saved us. What a joke. Anyways, let's keep going. There's time for hope, but also a time for honesty. Under the current strategy of international conferences and public spending on wealth transfer schemes disguised as green deals, true. There is no realistic scenario for successful decarbonization. True. What's truly necessary won't come to pass. Rigorous top-down programs that make the consumer polluter accountable for their energy consumption. It's far too late for convoluted carbon credit systems or tax maneuvers. The market-based approach is already proving to be a losing strategy. The idea of simultaneously backing multiple solutions is a misallocation of resources at this point, ranging from somewhat plausible ideas like electric vehicles to wildly impractical concepts like carbon capture, hydrogen, or geothermal, which remain unproven on a large scale. In a parallel universe where planetary health was prioritized over GDP, only a direct end-user penalty would be effective. But that direct penalty should affect end users, i.e. capitalists and manufacturers first, not regular people. And that is also something that he's not including in that statement. The first penalty payers should be the shipping companies, the manufacturers of cars, the manufacturers of everything, the fossil fuel generators themselves. Then maybe shift to, you and I paying some of the penalties for the direct consumption. Anyways, so what's the solution? We waste so much time when we rush to fixes and answers that do not meet the complexity of what is before us. Krista Tippett. Asking for the solution is the wrong question. What? The right question is, what is the truth about what is happening now? No. The right question is, what is the solution? Here is the truth based on the data I've presented in this post. The current energy substitution approach has failed to achieve meaningful reductions in global emissions, primarily due to unrealistic overestimation of renewable energy's potential impact. This failure is compounded by the absence of a contingency plan for when renewables fall short. The real solution lies in drastically reducing overall energy consumption. I'll go with you on that one. However, this won't materialize. Sure, it will when the economy collapses. It hella will. This won't materialize even if global consensus deemed it to be the right path. The reason is simple. There is no international coordination mechanism to plan and enforce such a sweeping change. Okay, we need to stop wasting our time. We need to end the futile debates about an energy transition that isn't grounded in reality. First, we should stop deluding ourselves with arguments over potential solutions. The only effective course of action is to reduce overall energy consumption. Yes. Secondly, we must relinquish the misguided hope that governments will step in to fix the problem. Their track record shows they won't. Agreed. He's making some decent points here. So sorry for my ridicule earlier. I don't believe that. I think the nuclear power thing was a bit misguided, but this is, he's making some good points here at the end. So maybe he has thought about it a little bit. Third, it's time to abandon the fantasy that technology will save us. Technological fixes have consistently failed to deliver on their promises. Again, great point. Fourth, we must cease debating the existence of climate change or environmental crises. The evidence is clear, and continued debate only delays the necessary action. Good luck on that. Fifth, discussions about the energy return on investment of various sources are distractions from the real issue. Lastly, we should stop fixating on which energy sources are the cheapest. This is a narrow view that ignores the broader context of sustainability and environmental impact. The hard truth is the path forward requires a radical shift in our consumption habits, not more debates or wishful thinking about quick fixes. All right. Well, I'll give this article I'll give it a B-. I'll give it a B-. It's okay. It was all right. He redeemed himself at the end there with some good points. Let me see if I have anybody to thank here. Don't know that I do. What's up? Rockfender's coming. I'm always coming around late to you guys. Denver's here. Laura's here. Some other folks are here. Thanks for watching on Rockfin, guys. So my favorite place to watch videos is Rockfin. Just looking through some of the comments here on Rockfin. Okay, thanks for the links, Denver. I appreciate it. Interesting articles. I will check them out. Anyways, thanks, guys. That does it for me. I appreciate you. I will be okay tomorrow. I won't be here. I'll be on Rumble doing a different show at 4 p.m. For those that know, you know what to do. All right. I'm doing a different show on Rumble tomorrow at 4 p.m. So Blackbear News will be back on Thursday at 4 p.m. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. Peace out.